At my wedding reception, the air was thick with the scent of champagne bubbles and perfume strong enough to drown in. The band had just transitioned to something slow and romantic when my mother leaned in, her smile perfectly curated for the circling photographers, and said, "We're giving the car your in-laws gifted you to your sister." Her tone was light, practiced, as if she were discussing the flower arrangements. Sophia laughed beside her, her sequins catching the light like 1,000 tiny mocking eyes. "Don't be dramatic," she said, the words slick and familiar. "It's just a car." The guests, caught in their own conversations, missed the exchange entirely, but my stomach plummeted, cold and hard, to the floor. My husband, Liam, didn't even flinch. He just watched them, his gaze calm, steady, and completely unreadable. And in that unwavering silence, I felt everything change. People often say that weddings show you who truly cares. Mine showed me, with brutal clarity, who never did. I grew up in a home where fairness was a fairy tale told over dinner, a concept never practiced in our reality. My mother, Victoria, adored order, but only the kind that kept her public image flawless and my private voice quiet. My father, Robert, lived by the creed that silence solved everything. And Sophia, my younger sister, was perpetually the fragile one. The world always curved to accommodate her whims. I was simply the foundation, the unacknowledged, unwavering support that made their entire world stand. When we were children, she got the larger bedroom because she was sensitive to small spaces. When she totaled her first car, a shiny convertible, Mum blamed the road conditions and the weather. I, on the other hand, worked triple shifts all through college to buy my own used sedan, and Mum called it building character. Sophia was always the reason. I was merely the resource. That pattern shaped me, molded me into someone always prepared to give, while someone else was always ready to justify the taking. By 28, I had painstakingly constructed a life outside their narrative. I was an architectural designer, meticulous and self-sufficient, the type of woman who paid her own way and didn't borrow anything, not even excuses. Meeting Liam felt like walking into a sunlight that didn't scorch. He came from a family that understood boundaries, that valued respect over appearances. His parents weren't wealthy, but they were generous in ways that cost nothing. They listened, they trusted, they offered space without strings attached. At our rehearsal dinner, they handed me a small silver key in a simple, unadorned envelope. "You've built this life together," his father had said, his eyes warm and sincere. "Here's something to help you move forward." It was a pre-owned SUV, reliable, practical, and it was titled solely in my name. It wasn't about the vehicle itself. It was about what it represented: trust, partnership, the kind of gift you protect fiercely because it was given with a pure heart. That evening, I caught my mother's expression, a tight, polite mask, her mind already calculating. She'd smiled at Liam's parents and said, "How thoughtful," but her eyes flicked instinctively to Sophia. I should have recognized it for the warning shot it was. On the wedding morning, she fussed over my hair, telling me how proud she was. "You've always been so generous, Chloe," she said, adjusting my veil with a critical eye. "Never lose that quality." Her perfume hung heavy in the air, sweet, suffocating. I smiled back, pretending not to understand the subtext, but a cold, quiet part of me already knew. Some gifts, in my family, were never meant to be kept. The reception felt like a film playing at double speed. Laughter, the clinking of crystal, countless polite smiles, everyone performing their part in the same predictable scene. Liam's hand rested firmly on the small of my back as we moved through our first dance. For a single suspended moment, it almost felt safe, as if the universe had finally agreed to play fair. Then I saw my mother cutting through the crowd, her pageant smile locked securely in place. She stopped beside us, her perfume trailing behind her like a chemical warning, and spoke just loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "We're giving the SUV your in-laws gave you to your sister." She said it as if announcing the time. Every other sound in the room blurred into a distant hum. Someone laughed at another table. The band's singer held a note that suddenly sounded like a fire alarm. Sophia appeared as if on cue, glowing under the fairy lights, her sequins scattering light with every practiced movement. "Don't be dramatic," she said, a playful shrug in her voice. "It's just a car." It was never about the car. It was about every possession ever taken, every boundary ever crossed, repackaged and sold back to me as family sharing. I studied my mother's face, composed, benevolent, utterly convinced of her own righteousness. She tilted her head, waiting for me to perform the gratitude she expected. "You and Liam can manage with one vehicle," she added, her voice dripping with false concern. "You've always been so practical." A guest snapped a photo capturing her hand on my arm, her smile brilliant. In the picture, no one would see how her fingers tightened, possessive and firm. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Liam's thumb brushed my wrist. A silent question. "Are you okay?" I breathed in air that tasted like broken glass and buttercream frosting, the familiar, acrid taste of compliance. My dad drifted over, drawn by the unmistakable tension. "What's happening here?" he asked, his eyes shifting nervously between us. "Nothing serious," Mom answered quickly, smoothly. "Just helping Sophia out. She's had terrible luck with cars lately, you know." Sophia laughed again, the sound soft and rehearsed. "It's fine, Mom, she doesn't mind sharing." Sharing? The word landed like a physical blow. I thought of the countless nights I'd spent editing Sophia's resume, the expensive clothes she'd borrowed and never returned, the endless apologies I'd made on her behalf, all those small surrenders, expertly disguised as love. I smiled then, a small, calm, dangerous smile. "You're right," I said, my voice deceptively even. "I don't mind sharing." My mother's shoulders relaxed visibly, mistaking my calm for submission. Liam didn't. His hand found mine again, his grip steady, certain. Across the room, the fairy lights flickered. A camera flashed. The air felt tight, electric, like the charged moment before lightning finally strikes. I leaned closer to Liam and whispered, "It's starting again." He looked at me, not surprised, just ready. And in that shared silence, I understood something fundamental. They hadn't come to celebrate me. They had come to test how much of me still belonged to them. After the cake was cut and the music softened to a background murmur, the room began to empty into a haze of laughter and wine. I smiled through 100 photographs, accepted congratulations that felt hollow as bone, counted the minutes until I could breathe freely again. When the final guest drifted toward the parking lot, Liam and I slipped out a side door into a quiet, carpeted corridor. He leaned against the wall, loosening his bow tie. "Do you want me to say something to them?" "No," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "We already did." He frowned, then remembered. We'd discussed this very scenario months ago, half joking over a pizza. My mother's lifelong habit of treating my possessions as communal family property wasn't new development. It was an inherited behavior, a gene expectation. So, I had decided to stop being inheritable. 2 weeks before the wedding, a colleague who worked as a paralegal helped me draft a notarized declaration. It stated in clear, unambiguous language that every gift received in my name before, during, or after the wedding was legally protected and not to be transferred, gifted, or sold without my written consent. I'd signed it in dark, permanent blue ink. So had Liam, as my witness. I recalled my colleague's exact words when she stamped it with her seal. "You're not being paranoid, Chloe. You're being prepared." Back in the quiet hallway, Liam reached for my hand. "You knew this might happen." "I hoped it wouldn't," I admitted, the weight of the admission heavy in my chest. "But I didn't want to bleed again without a bandage close at hand." We stood there for a long moment, listening to the muffled laughter and music from the banquet room. It sounded distant now, empty, like something that was already ending. I thought about my mother's expression, the sheer thrill of control so cleverly masked as generosity. She'd spent a lifetime training me to play the role of the gracious, self-sacrificing daughter. I had learned the part so well that nobody ever saw the quiet, strategic calculations happening behind my smile. Liam's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then turned it toward me. A text from a friend, a guest who was still in the ballroom. It read, "Your sister's already posting about the SUV." Below the text was a screenshot. There it was, a photo from our own driveway taken just days ago with Sophia posing beside the vehicle, caption already live. "Finally got a ride that matches my vibe." I laughed once, a dry, humorless sound. She couldn't even wait until the morning after my wedding. He met my eyes, his gaze steady. "So what do we do now?" I reached for my clutch, my fingers brushing against the thick, linen envelope inside. "Now," I said, my voice low and clear, "we let them spring their own trap." Liam exhaled slowly, a quiet, fierce pride shining in his eyes. "Then let's go finish this party." We straightened our clothes, fixed our public smiles, and walked back hand in hand toward the music. My heart was a steady, determined drum in my chest. The storm had already shifted direction, and I was no longer afraid of the rain. We returned to the ballroom as the band played another safe, romantic melody meant to paper over any silence. The room still glowed, warm and golden, but the atmosphere had fundamentally changed. Conversations felt thinner, more fragile. Eyes darted away and then back to us, full of unspoken questions. My mother stood near the crumbling dessert table, laughing a little too loudly, a queen restored to her throne. Sophia hovered beside her, phone still clutched in her hand, pretending to scroll. When she saw us, Mom brightened with a predatory gleam. "There they are," she called out, her voice saccharine, as if we'd been away on a brief, delightful adventure. Everyone was wondering where the beautiful bride and groom disappeared to. I offered her my most polished smile, just handling some final details. She didn't hear the warning in that sentence, or perhaps she did, and arrogantly believed she could still outmaneuver me. "Good," she said, her tone dismissive. "We're wrapping up soon. Sophia needs a ride home anyway." Liam stepped forward slightly, a subtle but unmistakable movement. "She has one now, doesn't she?" His voice was light, polite, and surgically precise. Mom blinked, the motions slow and confused. "What? The SUV? I thought we agreed she's taking it." Sophia tensed, her eyes darting between us like a trapped animal. "Oh, come on, Chloe," she began, her voice taking on that familiar wheedling tone. "Don't make this awkward. It's just a car." I finished the sentence for her, my voice flat. "I heard." My dad wandered closer, his face a mask of weary pacification. "Can we not do this here?" he pleaded, his voice tired. I turned to him, my calm unnerving even to myself. "Here's the thing, Dad. This is exactly where she did it. Publicly." The band faltered, the singer missing a beat before stumblingly continuing the song. A few guests turned fully now, the scent of champagne turning sharp and acidic in the air. Mum's smile stiffened into a grimace. "Chloe, sweetheart, you're overreacting. It was simply a misunderstanding." Liam held out the envelope from my clutch. "You might want to read this before you finish that sentence." Her hand hesitated in mid-air before she took it. She glanced at Sophia, then back at me, her confidence wavering for the first time. She unfolded the papers slowly. The rustle was loud enough to cut straight through the remaining music. Sophia leaned in to read over her shoulder. First confusion, then dawning recognition, then the colour drained from their faces, inch by devastating inch. Mum tried to laugh, the sound brittle and forced. "What is this supposed to be?" "A notarized declaration," I said, my voice carrying clearly in the hush. "Executed 2 weeks ago. It states that all wedding gifts titled in my name cannot be sold, gifted, or transferred without my written consent." Any attempt to do so triggers an immediate legal review and forfeits any future inheritance from Liam's family. The final words landed like a stone dropped into still water. Conversations halted completely. Someone whispered, "Oh my God," loud enough to be heard. Sophia let out a short, panicked laugh. "You can't be serious." I met her eyes, holding her gaze completely, allowing her to see the absolute resolve in mine. My dad exhaled heavily through his nose. "This is petty, Chloe." "No," I said, my voice softening dangerously. "Petty is pretending that theft is a family tradition." Mum's voice hardened, the matriarch rising to the surface. "We are your family. You do not treat us like common criminals." "You entered our garage without permission last night," I replied, my facts lined up like soldiers. "You took photographs of the SUV and posted them online as if it were already hers." Sophia's face froze in a perfect mask of shock. "That was a joke. It was symbolic." "Symbolic?" Liam asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "Symbolic of what exactly?" Her lips parted, but no answer came. The silence was answer enough. I turned my full attention back to my mother. "This isn't about the car, Mother, it's about the pattern. You call it love when you take what's mine, and you tell me I'm virtuous for surrendering it." "You're being dramatic," she snapped, her composure finally cracking. "Maybe," I conceded, tilting my head, "but this time the drama has witnesses." A visible ripple moved through the remaining guests. Phones were half raised, then half hidden. Someone's aunt mouthed the word drama behind her champagne flute. Sophia's voice cracked with genuine panicked tears. "You'd really humiliate the family like this? At your own wedding?" "I'm not humiliating anyone," I said, my voice flat and final. "I'm just ending the script." Liam took my hand, his grip a solid, grounding force. His tone was even, impeccably calm. "Mrs. Thompson, you should probably keep that document. It is legally binding." Mum stared at him as if he had personally driven a knife into her back. You encouraged this." "No," he said without a hint of anger. "She didn't need my encouragement. She just needed my respect. And she has always had it." Sophia's face flushed an ugly, mottled red. "You married up, didn't you?" She spat at me, her venom undisguised. "You think you're better than us now?" Liam didn't answer. He simply looked at me, letting me hold the space. "I did. Better? No," I said, my voice clear and carrying. "Boundaried? Absolutely." The word hung in the air between us. Boundaried. It sounded like a foreign language in that household, a concept they had never been forced to learn. Mum tried one last desperate gambit. "We raised you to be kind." "You raised me to give," I corrected her, my voice dropping to a near whisper that somehow filled the room. "You taught her to take." That was the fracture, the one single sentence that split the atmosphere in half. The band stopped playing altogether. Even the fairy lights above us seemed to flicker and dim. Sophia stepped closer, her whole body trembling with rage. "You will regret this." I smiled, a faint sorrowful curve of my lips. "I already did," I said, "for 28 years. For the first time in my life, my mother's perfect composure shattered completely. Her voice wavered, thin and broken. "Chloe, please, don't do this in front of everyone." "Then you shouldn't have done it to me in front of everyone." She opened her mouth again, but no sound emerged. The silence that followed was thick and absolute, a physical weight in the room. Liam leaned slightly toward the band leader. "Play something," he said, his voice quiet but firm. The drummer lifted his sticks, uncertain. The singer looked directly at me, seeking permission. I gave a single definitive nod. Music rose again, soft at first, then swelling, defiant, a steady heartbeat in the wreckage. Liam drew me back to the center of the dance floor. The guests parted for us as if we were royalty, or a walking detonation. As we moved, I caught our reflections in the mirrored walls, My mother's face, pale and still as marble, Sophia's streaked with smudged mascara, my father's staring at the floor in defeat. The envelope sat on the table between them, surrounded by empty glasses, a monument to their overreach. Liam whispered against my hair, "Breathe." "I am," I said, and for the first time all night it was true and... When the song ended, I turned one last time to my parents, still frozen near the ruins of the wedding cake. "Help isn't theft," I said, my voice even and clear. "And love isn't access." I placed my empty champagne flute carefully on the table beside the envelope, a final symbolic gesture. Then I took Liam's arm and we walked away through a sea of silent, wide-eyed stares. Behind us, applause didn't come. Only the rising tide of whispers like wind rushing through a broken window. Outside, beneath the gentle glow of the string lights, I exhaled everything I had been carrying for 28 years. Liam slipped his arm around my waist, pulling me close. "You okay?" I nodded, a real, genuine smile finally touching my lips. "I think I just stopped apologizing for existing." He smiled back, a world of understanding in his eyes. "About time." We stepped into the cool night air, the faint hum of music still trailing from the closed ballroom doors. Somewhere inside that room, the perfect, performative smile my mother had worn my entire life had finally, irrevocably, collapsed. The drive home was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels earned, not imposed. The city lights blurred past, soft and distant. I rolled down the window, letting the cool night air rush in, tugging at my veil until the pins gave way and the white lace whipped loose, disappearing into the darkness behind us. Liam laughed under his breath, a warm, real sound. "You just threw away your perfect movie moment." "Good," I said, meaning it with every fibre of my being. "I don't want one." We drove the rest of the way in a comfortable silence, hand in hand, the same SUV they had tried to take humming securely and obediently beneath us. Every mile put between us, and the reception felt like measurable distance from an old, festering injury. When we reached our house, Liam turned off the engine but didn't move. "You did it," he said quietly, the words full of awe and pride. I looked at our home, at him, at the life we had built. I had finally broken the pattern. Inside, the kitchen still smelled like the morning coffee we'd never finished in our rushed, happy chaos. I slipped off my heels, feeling the cool, solid tile beneath my bare feet. On the counter, my phone buzzed, a series of missed calls lighting up the screen. Mum, Sophia, Dad, unknown numbers. I turned it face down without a second thought. Outside, the crickets filled the air with their chorus, a sound I could hear now for the first time because the noise in my head had finally stilled. The silence didn't ache. It settled around me like a comfort. Liam wrapped his arms around me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder. "Still want that honeymoon road trip," he murmured. I leaned back into his solid warmth, a true, deep smile spreading across my face. "Let's take the SUV." A week later, I stood in that same sunlit kitchen. The same house, the same vehicle in the driveway, but everything within me felt rewired, recalibrated. On the refrigerator, one photo remained from the wedding, not of our first kiss or our first dance, but the moment my mother's smile had fractured, and I stood holding that envelope, my posture straight and my eyes clear. I used to think it looked harsh. Now it just looked honest. I realized then that freedom didn't always roar. Sometimes it whispered. It was the sound of a phone that no longer rang with demands, of doors I could lock without a pang of guilt. People say families collapse because of pride or money. Perhaps. But sometimes they simply collapse because one person finally, courageously, stops pretending. I looked at that photo and whispered to the empty, peaceful room. Boundaries don't destroy families. They define them. If you've ever had to draw a line with someone who called it love, share your story below. You are not alone in this, and you don't owe anyone your peace.